What's going on, guys, in the works? And today we're going to talk a little bit about the new Aftermath patch. Yes, I know there's been a handful of videos out there, but I'm going to give my 2 cents and kind of go through some of the things that I see in it, because Aftermath does release today, and with that we always tend to get a patch. And Aftermath's coming out for PS3, so you PS3 guys are actually going to be getting a double treat, because apparently, I don't know if this is factual. DICE has claimed that they have found a way to fix the input lag on the PS3. So if you've been experiencing input lag, apparently they think that they've fixed the problem. So that's actually good to hear, because it always kind of frustrated me that on the PS3 you guys got a lesser experience, that you weren't able to play the game to its fullest. So not only do you get Aftermath a little bit earlier, you are going to get a nice little treat. So let's hope that that finally fixes input lag once and for all. But the big need of this patch is obviously going to be the weapon balancing. And DICE is notorious, let's face it, they are very notorious for wanting to kind of test out how weapons perform without actually thinking them through. And I think a case in point in that respect is the fact that the M416 was patched to the point where it was just undoubtedly one of the best, if not the best, rifle in the game. And a lot of people were upset by that. Well, luckily in this patch they're toning it back a little bit. They're going to be increasing the first shot and horizontal recoil. So it's going to have more side-to-side movement, it's going to have more recoil on your first shot, which makes it a little bit harder to control. I think it'll bring it back down in line where it should be. They say that the reason why they're doing this is to make it more, more competition between the M16 and the M416, because they did go a little bit overboard, at least in my opinion, on the first patch. They made it just a little bit too strong. So you guys who were upset about the M416, they're going to bring it back down to earth. But some more things that kind of stood out to me was they're going to be reducing the horizontal recoil on the L85, which is actually kind of cool, because the L85 to me has always been this low recoil weapon. It's supposed to be a longer range weapon, but you don't ever see anyone use it. It's a very underused weapon. And it'd be nice to see the L85 get some sort of a buff. I think this recoil will help it out a little bit, and maybe it'll make it more of an attractive choice to a lot of people. So I'm kind of interested to see what that does for the usability of the weapon, to see if it increases its popularity, because I've always been a fan of it. I think this will only help it going forward. I mean, it already has really low recoil up and down, so maybe this will make it even lower. So I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. But one of the other things that kind of stood out to me was the FAMAS and the AUG are both getting changes. The AUG is actually getting its first shot recoil decreased a little bit, so it's actually going to be a nice little balance. It's not going to be as wild as it used to be. And that was one of the things that I think a lot of people didn't like about the AUG, was the fact that when you fired the weapon, it seemed to have a lot of initial recoil, even though the overall recoil of the weapon wasn't that high. So this should actually bring it back down to where it should be, at least in my eyes. It'll make it a little bit more controllable. So this does only shoot 700 rounds per minute. I think that's fair for it to have a little bit lower recoil. Now the FAMAS, though, they're reducing the horizontal recoil, which it's interesting to me. The FAMAS has gone through a lot of changes. I mean, you remember back in the day, it didn't really have a ton of recoil. It was really easy to control. It had a 30-round magazine. Now the reload on this thing is super slow, has tons of recoil, and really can't hit anything outside of, like, what, 30 yards, something like that. So it was kind of frustrating that the FAMAS got such a substantial nerf, but it seems like with each patch they're kind of bringing it back, and now they're going to be reducing some of the horizontal recoil, which might actually allow you to remove the foregrip, because that was one of the things I found myself forced to use when using the FAMAS, is the foregrip. But moving on here, I know we're starting to ramble about each weapon. Hopefully this video doesn't get too long and look at me rambling again, but two engineer weapons that are getting changed, the G53 and the QBZ95, both of those are getting a recoil reduction. The QBZ is getting a horizontal recoil reduction, and the G53 is actually getting a vertical recoil reduction, which I've kind of been intrigued by the G53 lately. It's actually been one of the weapons that you've seen me use in a lot of videos, especially on Armored Kill. I don't know what it is. It just seems to be a little bit different. I've liked the way it handles, and I think the fact that they're going to reduce the vertical recoil will make it much more attractive. I think we might see a couple more people out there using that. I won't go out on a limb and say a ton, because there's a lot of really good engineer weapons now, and honestly, it's hard to compete for attention when you've got the TAR, you've got the M4, you've got the ACR, all those good weapons out there that can pretty much do everything well. So we'll see if the G53 gets a little bit more popular. But the QBZ getting a horizontal recoil reduction is actually kind of cool, because I've actually been a supporter of that weapon. I think it'll actually kind of benefit it, because it is more of a long range engineer weapons, so it'll be interesting to see how people kind of adjust to that, because you don't ever, and I mean ever, see anybody using the QBZ. So alright, but 2 support weapons that are getting changed, and 2 interesting ones. And I know I've used the word interesting probably 100 times, but I'm always intrigued by weapons that are underused. I know if you look at some of my underused weapons videos, I always seem to gush over weapons that I don't see get a lot of respect, and I like to see like little like corners of the battlefield world that insert blank weapon can excel in. And the Type 88 and the LSAT have been the 2 ugly ducklings of the support world. I mean, let's face it, the Type 88, the LSAT don't really get used. They're probably at the bottom of the tree in terms of, you know, most used support weapons. That being said, the Type 88 is actually getting a recoil reduction, and they say the reason why they're doing that is to make it more of a viable option when compared to the M249. That was an interesting comparison by the DICE developers to me, because I would never compare the Type 88 to the M249, but apparently that's what they're going for. So the Type 88 will now have lower recoil. On the other side, we've got the LSAT, which is getting a hipfire bonus. And I've already said, you know, the LSAT is supposed to be a mobile LMG. That's the point. That's the reason why it was ever developed. That's the point of the caseless ammunition. It's supposed to be lighter, easier to move. And the way DICE kind of reflected that in-game was it gave it better hipfire. The LSAT, like I've pointed out in a lot of my LSAT videos, has really good hipfire, and it worked awesome if you put a laser sight on it, especially on some of the close quarters maps. Even though it was a low fire rate weapon, it had awesome hipfire and a lot of ammunition at 100 rounds with a laser sight. So they're actually going to be increasing the hip accuracy even more to highlight the weapon's mobile role in Battlefield 3. And that's awesome, because I think that the LSAT is finally going to see its purpose. You know, a hipfire, very accurate, very mobile weapon, and that's the one advantage I've always seen that the LSAT has over the Type 88. You know, the M240 Bravo, the M249, but you know, I'd rather use the M249 to be honest. But you know, the LSAT does have a slight advantage in the hipfire department, so that's pretty cool to me. I'm glad that they're actually highlighting the role of what the weapon actually plays in the real world. That's what I've always liked about how they give the bullpup weapons better hipfire, better movement, stuff like that. So good job on DICE. I actually like that patch. Now, a couple things that I saw that kind of stood out to me in the all-purpose weapons was the M5K was actually getting more horizontal recoil and less vertical recoil. It's going to make it a little bit more wild, because when they patched it and made it a little bit stronger, it became a little bit too powerful in a lot of people's eyes. I think this will kind of put it back in line as an up-close weapon with high damage. And then the UMP45 is getting a nerf. They're actually decreasing the fully automatic fire on it to make it more in line with the PP2000. And that's, I don't know how I feel about that. I'll have to try it out, but I think that's really going to hinder this weapon, because as it stood right now, it was really good. It had its role, you know, up close. It had a pretty slow rate of fire, and I can't imagine it being any slower. So I don't know how I feel about that one. It seems like DICE is just kind of throwing that one in there. Haven't seen too many people complain about the UMP45's fire rate, so we'll see how that actually plays out. But then one pistol change is they're actually increasing the accuracy of the Rex, the MP412, and they're kind of trying to balance it between the Magnum, because the Magnum's always been seen as the better revolver in the game, you know, the high damage pistol. So we'll see if more people will start using the Rex. It seems like they keep patching the Rex, keep making it stronger, and they keep nerfing the Magnum. So we'll see. I don't think that we'll see that many more people use the Rex, because I mean, an accuracy bonus isn't really going to be that obvious to a lot of people, at least in my eyes. So that wraps up all the weapon changes in the game. Now, they are going to be nerfing the gunship a little bit on armor kill. They are going to be fixing a lot of bugs throughout the games on various maps where you could like hide in rocks and stuff like that. So if you want to read about that, I'll put all the patch notes in the description so you can check it out. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. It was more of to give you guys my thoughts on the changes and kind of compare that when we actually get to, you know, our hands on the changes. All you PS3 and Xbox guys actually probably already have the patch, so you could get a pretty good idea of how it's going to handle. So once it comes out on PS3 though, I'll do some videos kind of comparing them before and after the patch, to give you guys an idea of what really happened to the weapons. I'm actually really kind of curious about the G53 and the M416 the most, because those are the two that I feel like are getting the most substantial changes. But we'll see. But you PS3 guys, enjoy Aftermath today, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.